Before we begin this week's record, I want to take a moment to encourage our listeners to check out the website linked below in the description. I am volunteering to promote what I believe to be a wonderful charity hosted by two of my favorite podcasts. Vulgarity for Charity is an annual charity drive jointly produced by Cognitive Dissonance and the Scathing Atheist podcasts, where they trade charitable donations for worthy causes for on-air roasts of whoever or whatever the donors choose. This year's charity is Recovering from Religion, which is a great resource which helps anyone who is either wanting a more healthy relationship with their beliefs or wish to safely leave faith behind. I know I might be risking offending some portion of my listeners, but I'm willing to risk that on behalf of people who were traumatized by religion and wish to live a more healthy relationship with faith and themselves. Please check it out. The charity drive runs from October 30th through Thanksgiving, November 27th. That's American Thanksgiving for you folks in Canada, of 2025. More details are in the description of this video. Now, on with the show.
Well, you can't get there from here. No, you can't get there from here. Go here and there and everywhere, and even up your own derriere. But you can't get there from here.
Hey, folks. You are listening to Can't Get There From Here podcast, and I'm your humble host, Canny Bellingham. And today I'm joined once again by one of my favoritist people in the world, Warren Reed. Welcome back, Warren.
Thanks. In these times, it's good to be welcome just about anywhere.
I agree. Well, you are welcome here anytime, my friend. Today we are breaking down some lost information somehow recovered by our friends at the Sanctified Sin YouTube channel about a famous group of serial killers who actually existed during the frontier days of Missouri and Kansas and who'd earned the name the Bloody Benders. Had you heard of the Bloody Benders before listening to this video, Warren?
I had not heard of them. If you'd asked me out of the blue, I'd think that the Bloody Benders had something to do with the night of heavy drinking and some knife juggling contests.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be appropriate. Well, for those of our listeners who aren't sick and twisted like me, and for whom true crime stories are what I listen to when I go to sleep, the Bender family is well known as the Bloody Benders. They were a serial killer family in Labette County, Kansas, United States, from May 1871 to December 1872. Keep track of those dates, listener, because they're going to matter later on. The family supposedly consisted of John Bender, his wife Kate Sr., their son John Jr., and their daughter Kate Jr. Contemporary newspaper reports that the Bender neighbors claimed John Jr. and Kate were actually husband and wife, possibly via a common law marriage, as per Wikipedia. So that part of today's video has some provenance to back it up.
It's a tiny acorn of truth, but from whence an entire, possibly true, but likely not, saga will be born.
However, everything that follows that tiny bit of fact-based history is perhaps stuff that either the newspapers found uninteresting or were information that suffered from the prolific and tragic demise via burned-down court records buildings. Maybe someday the government builders will learn not to buy building materials from stationery stores. But I'm not well-versed in construction, so what do I know?
With the lack of fire-resistant or climate-controlled storage back then, it's a miracle that any records survived, really. I often wonder if people stored things only to cover their asses for the duration of their employment, not really thinking that people like us would be snooping into their business in 200 years.
Silly people. Today's video begins with gunshots shattering the peace at dawn in an area called the Devil's backbone, sorry, in 1871, followed by an abnormal silence.
And the narrator says, quote, "The birds refused to sing, those stubborn birds. There were no chickens clucking, no children shouting, no dogs barking." And I'm thinking, it kind of sounds like heaven to me.
Well, actually, I enjoy the sounds of nature. But yeah, after gunshots echo through the early morning, I'd not expect to have Disney scene where Snow White is singing while surrounded by happy bunnies and bluebirds. Animals are just smart enough to shut the hell up after gunshots. Otherwise, hunting would offer no challenge at all. Animals would poke their heads out and do the animal equivalent of, "What was that?" And this country would have been completely devoid of wildlife before 1940.
Luckily, they're smarter than most characters in horror films. But as always, it seems to fit the theme of these stories that the members of the town target some family because they're either too quiet or they're too loud, or they smile too broadly or not at all. They have food when everyone else is hungry, or they starve when everyone else gets fat. So these small town folk particularly don't like it when people keep to themselves too much.
Well, maybe it used to be like that, but as someone who lives in a small town in Missouri, people minding their own business and keeping opinions about others to themselves is nearly a requirement here. But in these sorts of videos, you'd think people did little besides judging everyone and everything. In the previous video you and I did, folks would surveil others around the clock.
Yeah, the previous town was something else for sure, but in this place, the irony of the statement, "survival here was about minding your own business," really stuck out for me. I mean, really? For people to say that they follow this rule, they sure have a long list of suspicions about the Bender family. They also know an awful lot about all the supposed visitors that the family received. I mean, who was telling them? I doubt that many of the visitors were stopping off the local newspaper to give a rundown of their stay.
Exactly. Well, at least in this video, the AI author had the presence of mind not to say all of the visitors disappeared, and those who didn't apparently left the Benders raving reviews on Yelp or something, because the fame of the Benders spread far and wide. It's actually refreshing to only hear positive reviews of an establishment, and perhaps more businesses should consider the Benders business model.
Okay, so I missed the piece about some folks not making the cut for the butchery, or a lack of better term. But again, this family sets up shop in a remote area that nobody wants, where nobody goes, and yet there's a collective agreement in the town that they are very peculiar. Plus, they seem to have made a go of it, which really ticks everyone off.
Nothing is more aggravating than success of others. Just ask Walmart. They move through small local economies like the Grim Reaper of commerce.
It's like Pac-Man if the dots were all mom and pop businesses and there were no ghosts to stop him. Back to the frequent guests. So apparently the family's, quote, reputation for hospitality has spread across the mountains. And I'm not sure who the Bender's marketing firm is, but give that team a raise.
Well, who needs a marketing firm when you only let happy customers leave? Just tell them to fill out a review before they leave and screen out the ones who were upset about the amount of bloodstains found on the mattress. It's very difficult to complain when your lungs are no longer connected to your windpipe or your brain is slowly dying from oxygen deprivation. On a side note, I love the claim that people vanished all the time in the Appalachian Mountains. For people who were so incredibly up each other's asses, they were certainly complacent about the rate of disappearances of people who went there. What are you going to do, though, I guess? Looks like yet another Keystone Clan cops, I believe. Give up until you have a reason to actually do your job that you were hired to do.
I feel like in these stories that the job of the town sheriff is like running for treasurer in the middle school student council. Like, you get the glory, but expect to never have to do anything more than sign your name at the bottom of a page that someone hands you. So anyway, so here comes Martha. She's the Gladys Kravitz of this story. She's totally creeped out by this family, yet she chooses to set her snare traps within spitting distance of their house. Because in all the hundreds and hundreds of acres of land, wild deer apparently only exist in this small circumference of land outside the house of this large family who appear to be well fed on, quote, something.
Well, their children were creepy. If someone in your neighborhood has creepy children, they're just asking for the people around them to surveil them 24/7, you know.
Yes. So then, Martha, the archaeologist slash forensic expert,
Not to mention skilled biologist.
right? She notices a shitload of bones on their property, not animals that she recognizes. So this should be a one and done visit, right? She should be running straight to the sheriff, right?
You would think so, but I don't know, Warren. When you hear strange noises in my house, when I hear strange noises in my house, excuse me, in the middle of the night that are obviously human, and my husband is still in bed next to me, I'm of a mind to hunt down that noise while armed with a flashlight. That's how it goes in the movies anyway, but what I find strange is the property would be covered with bones and not cited by local health department or whatever it was that regulated businesses back then. At minimum, I'd expect some reviews to comment on the bone minefield the proprietors chose for landscaping.
Right.
By the way, Warren, I'm not a professional landscaper, but you're married to one. Do human bones make good ground cover? I'm asking for a friend, of course.
I'm also not the expert, but I do wonder if maybe it's not good to include too much calcium in the soil. That's just about as far as I can surmise.
Yeah, that might be true. Although I've heard that would keep the aphids away from the tomatoes. Uh,
Okay.
Well, the overnight guests obviously liked the aesthetic because at least a few of them were allowed to leave. Or alternatively, they were used to staying overnight where rotting bones lended their fragrance. But what did she do with that information, Warren?
Well, for starters, apparently she just called out, "Hello, the house." I'm like, what? I don't even know what that means. Is she trying to make the family think the house is talking to them, or was she talking only to the house?
Well, actually, it sounds to me like a knight who's ridden into a village and up to the door of one of the little huts and hovels and says, "Ho, the house!" to demand the residents to pay fealty.
Okay. Well, anyway, so Martha goes inside, and one of the first things she notes is that the floor, quote, looked like someone had scrubbed it desperately. And I'm trying to think what a floor looks like that would suggest that the cleaner scrubbed it desperately. Were there like tears mixed in with the shine? Did the person carve into the wood, "Please give me more floors to scrub? I'm desperate"?
Maybe the cleaner had a coke habit and they scoured the floor with a straw.
That would do it. Well, for some people, cleaning can be a dirty habit. Also, the description of the tough stains that the blood leaves in the cracks is starting to sound like a commercial for a really good floor cleaner.
Blood doctor, steaming mad at blood.
Yes. And then Martha notes that the meat on the table, quote, wasn't venison, too pale, too smooth, too human. WTF. So first of all, Martha's able to surmise what human jerky looks like, and that too human comment, as if it had been a blend of deer and human, maybe less than 75% human, that would have been okay, but not too human.
Well, according to the FDA, it regulates products with a moisture to protein ratio of less than 135 parts per one, leaving room for such stuff as vegetable matter, soy protein, human testicles, the usual.
Yeah. So basically, you're talking about the typical ballpark hot dog.
What else? Of course.
And then Martha spies an overturned satchel. Nice inventory of the contents, Martha. After identifying the human remains on the table in a house where people seem to have left only recently, you take the time to look at the letters and photos dumped all over the floor.
Well, there's that, but I was mostly just absorbed in the idea of someone carving their initials inside a Bible. Who carves their initials inside a Bible? There was a Bible in the satchel. It's with initials carved inside. Or who carves a Bible at all, for that matter? Were pens and ink banned in that part of the country at that time? I imagine that Bibles were just as prolific back then as they are today, but were much more expensive. Today, you could just about walk into any church and ask for one for free and be handed a dozen of them or so. Probably. I've heard people using pages of Bibles as rolling papers for joints, but even those hippies never thought to carve anything in the Bible, as far as I've heard.
Well, and then the narrator describes this traveling salesperson, Benjamin. I don't even remember him. He's a man whose routes and schedules were apparently well known by everyone as, quote, the kind of victim the Benders loved. And I'm thinking, what? They particularly loved the kinds of victims that everyone would notice missing, whose itinerary was well known and would lead the law directly to them?
Right. And potentially the kind of person who might be infected with every known social disease that was common back then. I don't know if you could cook syphilis out of meat, but I'm not willing to be the one to sample the meat from someone with gonorrhea, thank you.
I would imagine it gives it a real gamey flavor. I don't know.
Right?
So Martha sees random objects that she immediately classifies as trophies from the victims. I mean, first of all, I don't know that term of serial killer trophies was well known back then, but beside the point, because like a wedding ring, a child's toy, and a watch couldn't be from any other sources, all I can say is stay out of my bedroom nightstand.
But did you notice how the AI narrator suddenly forgot how to count? Because Martha found a pocket watch engraved with 3 haunting words. From your loving wife, Sarah. Which words in that 5-word sentence were the haunting ones?
It's like a really bad multiple choice quiz in school. Use the sentence with the 3 words and none of them have them. So I had missed that one, but I think my mind was probably still stuck on the image of that desperately cleaned floor.
Maybe. Okay, here I need to give the AI author a genuine compliment. I love the phrase, the wooden stairs groaned like a countdown clock as Martha descended. That will probably be the only compliment that I give to this author, so it had better appreciate it.
Yes, it's very worthy of Edgar Allan Poe for sure.
I love how Martha stands in the cellar and we have to assume stares skeptically at the meat hooks, the scarred table with meat cleavers, and then looks at the floor and realizes that the floor is the only part of the cellar that is honest. Apparently everything else in the cellar was lying if we believe the narrator.
A lion cellar. Well, lying by withholding is still lying, so I've been lectured as such anyway.
Then I must be lying every time I notice a fat person dressed in too small clothes and refrain from commenting. But do go on.
Okay, now wait. So we've made a sudden narrative leap from the Benders were a family no one trusted, who people gossiped about or didn't know, who were well fed on something, too well fed, some folks seem to think, only to find out suddenly that they were supplying meat for the entire town.
Well, it's called diversifying investments, Warren. Duh. They realized that instead of just burying their victims and stealing their belongings, they could instead butcher them, sell the meat to the community, and simply toss their bones on the ground around the home. I'd call that a good business sense. But I need to point out that venison, beef, and pork have drastically different flavors and textures, but apparently the community didn't notice and weren't bothered by that.
Well, yeah, and I love the comment about how people didn't dare to ask why. I mean, like, I know if I'm eating something that tastes drastically different from what I'm used to, I wouldn't dare ask why. Don't look a gift corpse in the mouth, my mother always said.
Indeed. It's like walking into a restaurant where the menus don't display prices. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. So quit your bitching and eat your finger sandwiches.
Yummy.
I have a question for you, Warren. Are floorboards known to tremble? Or during all of this death and mayhem, did they also have an earthquake no one mentioned? Because of the line, her voice trembled like the floorboards under her feet.
Yeah, I lean more toward quivering or even twitching floorboards rather than trembling. Anyway, so like right around like almost 13 minutes, the sheriff asks, arrives. No, I'm sorry, the sheriff arrives, and I hear this quote, drawn by the gunfire at early dawn, and I had to review to see that they even opened the story with gunshots, but I'm not really sure why they never really explained it, or did they?
Yes, but you were interested in the silence that followed the gunshots. But the gunshots were not nearly as engrossing as the AI author thought it would be for an opening. It had been offered like a Salvation Army ringing a bell outside a grocery store. Best to simply ignore it and keep walking.
Yeah. So anyway, the sheriff, he walks over that desperately cleaned floor, and looks into the cellar, and the narrator tells us that he wasn't thinking about justice, he was thinking about control. And I'm thinking, I say he should be thinking about all that meat that he's been eating for the last 3 years.
Right. No kidding. Yeah, if I were to suddenly find out that my morning breakfast sausage had once been a traveling preacher, I'd be concerned that he might have been one of those heathen religions. You know, the kind that is all about accepting people as they are, welcoming the stranger, and feeding the poor. I'd get really sick if I discovered I'd eaten a communist.
Or wondering what a Baptist would think, realizing he'd eaten a Presbyterian even. Well, at any rate, like, the sheriff is thinking about how to tell the town that they've been eating human flesh.
And the narrator describes how much the community seemed to enjoy it and how children had grown strong with it. Elders had survived brutal winters with it. Weddings had been celebrated with the meat that had come out of that extremely unsanitary cellar, with bits of blood and flesh rotting as it clung to the walls. So what's the problem?
Well, and I'd probably be thinking of a way not to tell them this. Somehow they'd probably figure out a way to blame the sheriff anyway.
As you do.
Yeah. Well, it appears the solution is to lie to everyone. The narrator makes it a point that the sheriff thought to tell everyone that the family went to Mississippi and that all the missing people were, quote, victims of harsh terrain, not human predators. Yeah, so he decides to clarify that final point just in case they immediately jump to the strange conclusion. So yeah, just so you know, all those people just got lost, right? They totally weren't butchered and sold as meat to all of us in the town or anything.
No, Warren. It's best to just come clean and deal with the mass panic afterwards. Exposure therapy is the best kind of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
No one has ever been seriously harmed by suddenly and ruthlessly explaining to an entire community that they'd accidentally participated in cannibalism for several years. Best to just allow the mayhem to ensue unhindered.
Yeah. Well, I think the best thing is to just bury it in a list of other things. So yeah, we need to watch the reservoir levels. The Smith family welcomed a new baby, and also we've all been eating human flesh for 3 years. How about that barn raising last week?
I was confused by the narrator explaining that the cover-up was born out of cowardice at this point. Not that I disagree, but it could be argued that the cover-up had been born out of compassion for the community who had been blithely munching on travelers. However, I stick to my guns that honesty is the best policy when deciding to devastate the moral sensitivities of an entire community filled with innocent bystanders. However, on that note, before we continue, we are going to take a short break to alleviate our bladders and maybe find a snack. But stay tuned to find out whether the Bender family was eventually featured on Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen.
Doc, do you understand what we stumbled on out there ain't for public ears? Folks hear the word cannibalism, they'll panic faster than a jackrabbit in a brush fire.
Oh, I know, Sheriff, but it's fascinating. The human body as cuisine? Why, I could give a lecture at the county fair. Imagine the turnout.
Lecture, Doc, this ain't a sideshow. You breathe a word of this and we'll be having reporters and gawkers and half the town barricading their kitchens.
Well, surely a little transparency builds trust. I could publish a paper, The Curious Case of Culinary Anthropology. Has a nice ring to it.
Now, Doc, you listen close. You keep this quiet. Lock it up tighter than Moss pickle jar. If you so much as whisper it to your dog, I'll have you writing confessions instead of papers.
I see. You want me to rebrand it, call it Unusual Dietary Practices of the Ozarks. That way it sounds academic, not alarming.
Mm.
So, no recipe cards at the church potluck?
Lord help me.
And we're back. Now, last we heard, the sheriff was trying to decide how to handle the cover-up. He and the doctor agreed to a cover story and to carry the story to their graves.
So the doctor ends up spilling the beans in his journal, and one thing he writes is, the Benders weren't killers by desperation, they were running a business. And I'm thinking, that's interesting. That's exactly what Martha said to herself earlier. I'm beginning to suspect that maybe there's something or even more rotten in the state of Devil's Backbone Hollow.
Well, we'll find out. Do you think the area earned its name before or after the Benders arrived? Because if I wanted to embark on a business where I'm processing and selling human meat, to experience that sort of success, any sort of success at this venture, it's all about location, location, location.
Right. And so a total aside here, I love that Sheriff McCready's last name is pronounced McCready. Like, okay, everyone take your C8s. We're going to re-aid the story now.
Well, didn't you know? AI is hooked on phonics. It has become a real problem for the artificial intelligence. It's reduced to blowing laptops behind a dumpster in order to fund its addiction now, you know.
Hey, goes to show you that just how messed up the English language really is. Well, anyway, so far I've heard that the secrets don't stay hidden forever. They rise like bones after a heavy storm. I've heard that simile twice. We get it. Rain washes away dirt from poorly buried corpses pretty easily, so be sure and bury your victims at least 4 feet down and probably not on sloping ground.
Well, that's why smart murderers all agree. Concrete. Make sure
Yes.
you use concrete to hide your crimes. By the time your deeds are discovered, the murderer is long gone and enjoying the life insurance money on the beaches of Acapulco. Or so I've heard.
Right. Pay no attention to that random concrete patio in my backyard. Okay, I'm confused. So the sheriff and doctor agree to keep things quiet and they leave.
Did neither of them think to tell Martha about the plan to bury the truth or try to move on?
Right, because after 3 weeks, Martha is pulling up floorboards and finds the diary. It's kind of a crime scene now, I'm thinking. I guess they didn't take the time to secure things. I mean, maybe if they really wanted the truth hidden, they could have burned the place down. I mean, that's what they did back in those days.
I'm trying to follow Martha's stream of thought that led her from a house that was too clean to, I need to rip up the floorboards of that place. And it's a good thing she did too. Otherwise, we'd not be listening to this video. And we'd both agree that what a tragedy that would have been. She must have had a homing device trained to find hidden objects because she used a crowbar and immediately uncovered the diary.
Yeah, in the movies they usually have to do things 3 times before they find it, but she was lucky. So
Right.
there's this convenience of a diary and a writer who has to have someplace to vomit all the incriminating details of their nefarious deeds, and in the process blame it all on her husband in the process.
Yes, but I don't think it was all his idea is considered a valid defense anywhere.
Well, I would say something political right now, but I won't. So let's not veer into those politics. But again, the narrator tells us this wasn't just a murder, it was a business, an intricate corporation, in case you didn't get this the last 2 times.
Oh, please, don't flatter yourself, AI. A corporation? How many affiliates did they have? Was it publicly traded on the stock exchange? How many shareholders had secured of people willing to invest in a cannibalism venture?
Oh, and then the narrator randomly says, explosion symbol, wait. Huh?
Oh, don't you use those kinds of things in the books that you write, Warren, in order to build dramatic tension? Maybe you should consider it.
I haven't, but I think I will now. Yeah. And then they say the most chilling detail wasn't the blood.
It wasn't?
It was the business. They'd built an empire. Hey, listeners, in case you think it was all about the murder, it totally wasn't.
Oh, that's a relief. I was worried it was just done as a way to dispose of the evidence and also profit from it. But I need to point out that it was all about perfecting their craft too. Pride of workmanship is Ezra minimize waste and when producing cuts. It's always nice to see someone who is able to find a way to earn money while doing what they loved, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, wait. So all this time we're told that the townspeople were suspicious of them, that they kept to themselves and were basically creepy, and yet we now know that they not only supplied meat to the whole town, but they advertised their meat on posts and handed out leaflets at barn raising events. So they got around plenty.
Sounds like the Benders were considered pillars of the community, actually, and their business now reached across state lines, at least according to the letter from Wilhelm in Missouri that confirmed a good harvest of 6 guests processed in 1 month. And we're told that the Benders were part of a nationwide network of frontier butchers. I wonder if this is how Tyson Foods got its start.
And I also think that maybe that's where the term human resources got its start.
Very
Oh,
good.
oh, and there's another AI hiccup glitch. White right pointing backhanded index.
I don't think that was a mere hiccup or glitch, Warren. I think the AI author of this video had Kuru, which is a very rare disease caused by an infectious protein or prion found in contaminated human brain tissue. Kuru is found among the people from New Guinea who practiced a form of cannibalism in which they ate the brains of dead people as part of a funeral ritual. I have no idea how an artificial intelligence might have contracted such a disease, but I wish someone would write an AI authored video describing that.
Maybe they will now. I would watch it. So in the diary, Miss Bender says that they have to leave. Too much heat on them due to their multi-state meat rendering empire, saying the kids are disappointed to leave their friends. What? They've only been described as creepy as shit. They're helping their parents kill and butcher visitors. There was no mention of friends up to now. And what the hell would that even look like? Where were they playing and with whom? Plus, kids can't keep secrets for shit, so one of these creepers would have fessed up for sure.
No doubt.
No, Susie. For the last time, we can't cut up my porcelain doll and pretend it's Thanksgiving dinner. Now stop asking.
Oh, kids, the things that come out of their mouths, or in this case, that go into them. Oops, now the narrator saying, police car revolving light blue. An AI hiccup.
I love this so much. It's so good. The narrator trying to read emojis.
Oh, and there's a new character. There's Patterson, a hard-boiled detective who will leave no stone unturned, somehow brought to Devil's Backbone Hollow. He's on the trail with a stack of missing persons flyers.
I like the line, no telling what ordinary people would do to protect themselves from extraordinary crimes. At this point, I'm pretty convinced that these can't be categorized as ordinary people.
And they mention a whole family disappearing too. A whole family? That's a lot of meat to process.
Well, it depends on the number of people who will be fed, of course. Churches are known to have picnics and invite the entire community.
Gatherings that are big are a huge undertaking and typically cost an arm and a leg. Dun, dun. All right, hold on. So right around 29 minutes, we suddenly have 5 creepy kids staring back at us on the screen. And there had only been 4 previously. So what gives?
Maybe they changed what the day's menu was. Buy 4, get 1 free.
Okay, so this was a syndicate, an expansive organization of cannibalism, as we've been told. Like, somehow they were all communicating techniques, strategies, information, probably recipes. I wonder if they had conventions of sorts or reunions, and I also wonder how relaxed they would have all been there, knowing that an invitation for dinner might mean you were actually the main dish.
Also, how many times did someone show up to deliver a telegram and was immediately filleted before they read the final line of the message? Respond immediately. Dope.
And then pretty soon the family was found already building their next menu. The officials are worried in some other state. I don't remember the state, but the officials are worried about what will happen when the truth comes out. But I'm thinking that since this has been going on for so long and in so many places, that there might be a real kinship kind of thing that could happen, like maybe a club of sorts. Oh, you ate human flesh from the Benders? Oh my God, so did I.
I won't buy from anywhere else.
Yeah. So pretty soon, then we find out more of the intricate details of the supposed syndicate that's been going on for decades. Extended family that passed coded details through couriers and church sermons. Sermons? I mean, I've imagined that most church sermons are packed with coded messages, but this is the first I've heard of recipes for Rack of Sam or Children a la King.
Oh my God.
So the narrative continues to remind us that this thing was more than a local backwoods family, but an extensive network that multiple families nationwide took part in, somehow communicating with one another in this pre-electronic age. Kind of a 19th century Amway.
I'm not sure I'd call it continuing to remind us. For several minutes, the narration loops back on itself several times regarding the Benders starting in Kansas, fleeing to Alabama, hearing a message from cousin Wilhelm in Missouri, then back again to Kansas before looping back to Alabama. It makes me wonder if there are time rifts within the artificial intelligence universe.
Well, then as you're describing that, I'm thinking of the, when we were kids, the spirograph little design thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what their pathways were like through all these states. It probably was like a very kind of cool bloom type of a symbol once you traced it all out. Anyway, so by the way, and if you look at the screen, we're back to 4 kids on the screen. So I don't know where that fifth one went.
Yeah, I noticed that. I guess the weekly special ended.
So we're at the trial portion of the crimes.
And it's about goddamned time, too.
Yeah, so interesting that during the trial, Martha is called as a star witness. Remember Martha, the clean floor inspector and floorboard puller? All she did was she walked into the house after the fact and saw the same stuff the sheriff and doctor did. And other than the floorboards, she ripped up without a warrant.
Her trial for trespass and interfering with an active investigation was scheduled for later that week.
So Ezra takes the stand, supposedly to generate sympathy and humanize him. Yeah, if I was the defense attorney, I'd totally trust putting him up there. Instead, he treats it like he was running a soup kitchen during the Great Depression, giving all his heart and those of his victims in pure charitable intention.
Well, not his heart. He kind of needed that to continue his work with Cannibals Incorporated.
So right around 54 minutes. So here the narrator reminds us for the 78th time that the family didn't operate alone, but were part of a giant network in case the listener has forgotten.
Or has just returned from the ER after suffering a stroke.
Yes. And then, oh my God. So like about 52 and a half minutes, we're now back to 5 children on the screen staring back at us. However, for some reason, this time the 5th child does not belong. The 5th child looks as if they've slipped away from a family in Topeka or Skull Holler, Arkansas, to photobomb with the Bender kids. Whoever they are, I'm thinking they're like a product of Uncle Fester and Cruella de Vil, with their this hollowed face and skull-tight knit hat and arms firmly held to their sides. It's like they were accidentally teleported into the portrait, praying silently that nobody notices they're there.
Sweet Jesus Christ on a Trisket. I read this in your notes before I got to that part in the video, and I spent 10 minutes cackling when I finally saw it. He looks like the villain child character at the Marvel Comics universe had postpartum aborted. And listener, if you don't listen to these videos, and I don't blame you, if you choose not to, please just go to minute 57:38 in this video and pause it to stare into the eyes of a horror that nature wanted to keep buried. The Sanctified Sins YouTube channel somehow uncovered this abomination. Oh my God, this kid.
So at this point, I'd also like to note that the narrator has randomly uttered the phrases white right pointing backhand index and high voltage phone no less than 6 times already. Is this like an AI Tourette's thing? I mean, I'm not mocking the condition in any way. I just wonder is all. Like, I mean, I kind of like the idea of AI having to deal with the same kinds of shit everyday humans have to grapple with.
After seeing that kid who looked like the Grim Reaper and Steve Buscemi had an ass baby they never talked about, I don't blame AI for its little tricks and ticks and hiccups so much. I don't know that I'll ever be able to sleep again knowing that I might be startled into panic wakefulness by that kid's face.
Okay, it made me tempted to print out that picture and frame it in my house. And when people say, "Who's that creepy kid?" I'll say, "What are you talking about? I don't see any kid in that picture." Anyway, so the story ends with the revelation that once the town finally tore down the house, they discovered a huge network of tunnels under the basement, suggesting that this sort of thing had been going on well before the Benders. The problem, though. First, nobody ever indicated an issue with anyone before them, and we know that they would have. And it was clearly stated that the Benders moved to that spot and built a life there where no one else would even try. So consistency, much like non-human meat, is clearly scarce in this place.
Yeah, enough with the hidden underground tunnels, AI. Nearly every one of these stories has a hidden network of tunnels, usually decorated with pagan symbols and shackles chained to the walls. And to toss in this nugget at the end of the story is just villain dressing, completely superfluous.
So as we conclude, one thing I'd like to imagine that has not been addressed is that there must be that one vegetarian family who up to now had been the laughing stock of the town. Well, Devil's Backbone Hollow, who's laughing now?
Are you kidding? I really doubt a vegan or vegetarian would have been allowed anywhere in the wild frontier. They'd be driven from the community for their indecent compassion and respect for they might have for other living creatures.
Yeah. I see a historical fiction series in the making, like Little Velma, the vegan virgin of West Virginia.
Well, on that note, Warren, let me ask you, how would you reveal to your family members the fact that that they'd all eaten human meat that you'd accidentally served them for Thanksgiving? Or would you instead choose just to let them live with the consequences?
That is a good question. I think I'd say something like, you know how I told you I picked this turkey up from Safeway? Well, actually, I picked him up from the side of the highway, and he may or may not have been from Turkey. That's about as close to a real Thanksgiving as we're having this year, kids.
I hope your mother listens to these videos, Warren. I'm sure she'd appreciate that revelation. Well, that concludes our review of the 1871 Alabama family crime they tried to erase, whoever they are. And I want to thank you, Warren, for helping me digest this sumptuous meal of a story.
Bon appetit!
I also want to thank our listeners who made it this far, and I encourage you to like, maybe subscribe to hear more reviews of AI authorship. And most of all, please, I'm begging you, leave a comment. I'm doing my best to get this channel growing, and I need your help in doing so. I hope all of you have a great day.